What we are doing for our, well, my new project, what I'm doing, is making temperature blankets for the years that my two youngest kids were born, which is 2012 and 2013. So I made a chart like this. I will figure out how to upload it. Until then, if you want a copy, send me a comment in the comments below with your email address. I can email it to you. But basically, it's a chart of 365 little squares where you can write down the temperature for each day, which I did for 2 consecutive years. After each month, I just do a line underneath just to mark that that month is over. It's kind of easier to keep track of when you're doing it. You can be like, oh, that was October. Like if you get messed up or you lose your place of copying the temperatures down, you can at least count the days of that month and figure out where you're at. And plus, if you're doing your temperature blanket, maybe you'll be like, okay, today I'm going to do January, or I'll do May, or something like that. It might help motivationally later on. So we're doing that. And the colors I picked is not how I originally had it, but I decided, because I'm doing them for more than one of my kids, and I might end up doing it for all 4 of my kids, is have hot being hot, red, and then working down from there in the colors that I have that are kid-friendly and nice and bright. I'm using 1 color of yarn for each degree, and for the 2 years that I did, 2012, 2013, the lowest temperature, which I think was on one day that year, was 17, and the highest was 32. 32 was one day. 31 was 2 days. Most of it is in this range here. Not crazy about it, but it does make sense on a temperature scale. Like if you looked at the blanket, you could guess that that was, you know, the color blue would be colder. You know what I mean? It would make sense. So this is what we're going to do. I am using the nice chart from Crochet Crowd to figure out my size. I'm going to make twin size blankets or single. Twin and single are the same. But on this chart from Crochet Crowd, it says twin. But if you are in the UK or here, it's single. And I think that's the size I'm going to make for my kids because it's a good size. I'm going to do single with a drape. And I think I'm probably going to use a 5mm hook because some of my yarn is a bit thin. So I'll switch the camera over to the workspace and we'll start our chain and our first few rows. So excited. Let's get started. We have our yarns assigned to each degree of temperature for Nairobi. You're going to need scissors, darning needle of any sort, and I'm going to be using a 6mm hook for this particular afghan. And for my chain, I'm going to use a 6.5. I use a bigger hook for my starting chain because mine always ends up a bit too tight. So I use a larger hook, and then it's easier for me later on. It tends to have an easier tension for when I'm finished. So those are my colors I'm using. We're starting, for this one I'm doing January 2013 is where I'm going to start. This is the lovely chart from Crochet Crowd that is just fantastic. So I'm going to be using the twin size, or making the twin size, which is also single if you are in a different part of the world, like me. And the 6mm hook is here, and the twin or singles here. So 127 chains without a drape. I think for kid beds, I'm going to do it without a drape. So 127 chains is what I'm going to start with. And my starting temperature is 25 degrees for 2 days, so that's lucky. And 25 is this green color, the light apple green. So I have all my yarn spun into cakes. So I'm ready to go. Make a slip knot by wrapping, you can do it anyway, but I wrap it around 2 fingers, making a bit of an X so that the working yarn is behind, and then I poke it underneath in between my 2 fingers and pull it. and make sure that the yarn attached to the ball of yarn is the working yarn. But if you did it like me, it is. So 127. So let's count sets of 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And let's put a stitch marker in that 20th stitch. And we'll count to 20 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So continue on this way until you have enough stitches for the size of afghan you're going to make. And then when you count back, you go 20, 40, and you can see how many you've done just by counting the stitch markers. I've done my chain. I'm taking out my stitch markers. They were just there to help me count, so I didn't have to count all the way to the number of chains. I could just add them up easy. Okay, so there's my chain. So this is our starting chain, and I'm going to be using this color for 2 rows, 25 and 25 degrees. So my starting chain doesn't count as a row, but we're going to be doing 2 rows of double crochet on top of this without changing color. So we're going to be going into the camel bumps. This is the side that we normally stitch into, the V's. That's how we count our stitches. But for camel bumps and for starting, we are going to flip it over and go into the bumpy side. And we're going to be going into each one of these camel bumps. They're called back ridges, but we call them camel bumps. No reason other than it's funner to say, more fun. And why we're doing that is so that your edge of your blanket that you start on ends up looking like perfect V's, the same as the edge of your blanket where you finish. You see, they both have nice V stitches. If you don't do it, if you just go straight into the V's, you end up with like a loopy side. And you can tell that's where you started. So flip your V's down so the flat side of your chain is on your hand. We're not going into this first camel bump or a back ridge. We're going into this second one. It's the one you can easily reach. So push your hook in, grab your yarn and bring it back, wrap your yarn and take off 2. That's a single crochet. So into the next camel bump, push your hook in, grab your yarn, bring it back, wrap your yarn and take off 2. Continue doing this all the way back along your chain, making 1 single crochet into each camel bump as you go, or back ridge. How do you know if your chain is loose enough? Because you don't want to start your whole project and then find your blanket is wavy or too tight. It won't stretch on one side. So I made my bigger chain like we did together, and before you can do this in the beginning before you get going too far, is you give it a pull. And it should stretch the same on both sides. One side shouldn't totally close shut, like it shouldn't be super tight. So you do your chain, do some stitches, maybe 10 stitches, and then give it a pull to see if it has the same stretch on the chain side and the single crochet side. So pause the video, get to the end of your row, and I will meet you there. So I'm going into the last stitch. The knot doesn't count, so this is our last stitch. You can see. And because I'm not changing colors, I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. Now our chain counts as our first stitch, our chain 1. So we're going to go into the second stitch with a single crochet, going all the way back. At the end of our row, here's a stitch here that's obvious, the last of the V's. And then we're also putting one into our chain. That chain one counts as a stitch. So get your hook into that one and do a single crochet into there. And you see there. So that counts as a single crochet. So into the last one that's a V, and then make one into that little chain. Now I'm changing colors. I'm going to my 23 degrees, which is a nice teal color. So I'm going to cut my yarn and do a chain to pull my yarn through. So that makes a little bit of a knot. Now to join another color, we're going to start by making a slip knot. Putting it on our hook. And with our tails, because we have a lot of tails coming on with this blanket, we're going to weave the tail we just finished underneath our V's. So just take it and weave it back and forth under some of the V's. It helps from sewing them all in later, because obviously it's like 700 tails you'll have, which is too many to manage. So weave this in back and forth, maybe for 6 or 10 stitches. There we go. Let's do 2 more. Alright. So you can't see it. It hasn't done anything to our work, but it's inside there now. So that's convenient. So we're going to turn our work, put our yarn, our loop back on our hook, and I'm going to go into this first stitch, this one here. It's the first one, and I'm going to slip stitch my yarn. I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to do a single crochet into the same space. So that is all into the first chain, the first space, the first stitch. And I'm going to go over my tail, doing a row of single crochet into each stitch, going halfway over my tail. When I'm halfway over my tail, I'm going to drop it behind, and I'll come back later with a needle and thread like that. So there's still enough to use with a needle. I'll throw it behind, and this, now I'm going to keep going with my single crochet. So now I'm back to where this tail is, and it's the same color. So to save some effort, I am going to weave it underneath the stitches, going back, because we stitched over it here, just underneath, so now I'm putting it underneath that row of stitches, just even for a few stitches, and we'll be able to just cut it off after. But better safe than sorry, so I'm weaving it through quite a bit. Okay. So now I'll just make my stitches regular single crochets underneath those V's. And that'll catch that yarn enough where it's not going to go anywhere. So now I've gone over it and leave it behind. Finish my row. Let's cut this guy off now. So there's one tail gone. This other tail, I think I'm also going to do it now. Now I'm finished with this color. It was just for those 2 days. So I'm going to cut my yarn and pull it through and tighten it to make a bit of a knot. Now our tail, we're going to do the same thing. Going underneath the V, weave it back and forth at least 6 times. I'm going to get my new color. Let me check the temperature for that day. The good thing about a historical temperature blanket is you know what you're doing. You know if you're keeping your yarn or not. So I've done 25 degrees for 2 days, 23 degrees for 2 days. Now I'm on to 25 degrees. The other thing you want to do, take a contrasting pen, something you haven't used for writing your temperatures, and tick off the ones that you've done. So now I'm on to 25. So I'm going to tick off 25. And I'm going to check 25. It's the light green again, the apple green. So I'll take my apple green and make a slip knot. Put it on my hook. Turn my work. And I'm going to go into this first stitch and slip knot to join. Chain 1. And I'm making a single crochet into that same space. So there's our join. And back along we go, single crochet, 1 into each. So we finished our row, cut our yarn and pull it through, pull it tight to make a bit of a knot, and weave it underneath our V's. Our temperature, we did 25, so now we're on to 26. Oh wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of 26. And that 26 is our lemon meringue. That's good. So 6 rows of this color. Oh, it's very cold that year. So do the same way, make a slip knot, reduce it down, get your hook, put it on your hook, get your work back over the side that we just wove in, turn your work, and you just put it into this space here, into that stitch we made. And we do a slip stitch to join, a chain 1, and a single crochet into the same stitch. And going over our tail halfway, we'll do a single crochet into each stitch, throwing our tail back when we went over about half of it. We'll be chaining up 1 and turning our work and going back along. And because I have 5 days of this temperature, I'm going to be doing 5 rows. And just to make sure I don't cut my yarn by accident, I'm going to take my scissors and put them very far away from myself, because that's what I tend to do, is automatically cut my yarn. So I've gone over about half my tail. I'm going to drop it behind and continue along my merry way, doing my 26 degree temperature. So I've done my 5 rows of this 26-degree color. I'm going to cut my yarn and do a chain 1 or to get a little knot there. I'm going to weave in my tail for some stitches. And you'll be continuing this way for the rest of your blanket. If you have any questions or you need some clarification, leave. You can always comment in the comments below. I will check it and reply to the best of my ability. This is 1 month, well, it's today's work, but this is 1 month of temperatures. So this is actually a teal color, but it looks blue sandwiched in the apple green. And there's 2 shades of yellow. Oh yeah, you can see good in the camera. It's a bit thicker along the edge. Let me move that. See, it's a bit wider along the edge than it is in the middle, but we'll block that when we're finished our work. That's from weaving in the ends back and forth, but no ends. So I think it's worth it because that many ends, it's very discouraging. So I don't mind it being a bit thicker. I'll worry about that or it's sorted out when I'm finished my blanket. This is 1/12 of the blanket. Let me get a ruler so you can help calculate how big yours will be. Oh good. I have a ruler just handy. So this is about 8 inches in the skinny part. 8.5 at the fat side. So you get about 1/2 inch from putting in your ends. Don't know if that's so worth it, but I'm doing it. So 8 inches, 8 times 12 months, 96 inches. So divide by, oh well that's easy, isn't it? Divide by 12 again. So it'll be 8 feet. 8 feet tall. That's quite tall, isn't it? I suppose if you didn't want it 8 feet, you could use a smaller hook. Or, I made one with a 5. Let's just check that. Because this is January of 2012. Starts this way. See my nice ends? I actually just want to start again. That's how bad those ends are. So this yellow is the last row of January. Let me move that up then. So it's 7 1/4 if you use a 5mm. So that'll be 7 1/4 feet if you use 5mm. Oh, what to do? So I guess it doesn't really totally matter. I can't wait to see yours. So post pictures, comment, like, share with your friends, subscribe, and can't wait to see what is on your hook. Thanks for watching. Stay hooked.